Are you the funny one in your family? The one who can walk into any tense room and have everyone laughing in 10 seconds? Then answer this honestly. When's the last time anyone actually asked if you were okay? Not "you're so funny," not "you always know how to lighten the mood." When's the last time someone looked past the joke and asked what's actually going on underneath it? Yeah, if you're struggling to remember, stay with me because there's a reason for that. And it starts a lot earlier than you think. The room's tense, two people who love each other are still finding ways to fight, the air changing before anyone even raises their voice. And then a kid does something almost automatic. A weird voice, a dumb face, a joke about the mashed potatoes, and it works. Someone laughs, the tension breaks, nobody notices the kid's hands are shaking a little under the table. That's the moment this whole story usually begins. And here's the part almost nobody says out loud. That kid grows up, and they very often become the funniest person you know, not despite what happened at that table, because of it. Psychologists have a name for this pattern. They call it the sad clown paradox. And once you understand how it actually works, you will never look at the funniest person in your life the same way again. Nobody taught that kid to do that. No one sat them down and said, when things get tense, make a joke. They figured it out on their own, probably by accident the first time, and noticed something important. It worked. The yelling stopped. The eyes in the room turned toward them instead of at each other. For one small moment, they had control over something that usually felt completely out of their hands. So they did it again and again until it wasn't a trick anymore. It was who they were. Researchers who study comedians keep finding the same origin story over and over. Childhoods described as isolated or tense, where humor became less a talent and more a release valve. Here's the part that makes this genuinely fascinating instead of just sad. That kid wasn't faking anything. Humor is not a lie about how you feel. In psychology, it's actually classified as one of the healthiest defense mechanisms that exists. When something painful happens, the mind has options. It can bury it, it can deny it, or it can transform it. Humor is the mind choosing transformation live in real time. Psychologists call this cognitive reappraisal, taking something unbearable and shrinking it down into something survivable, even laughable. And it's not only in the mind, it's in the body. A real laugh floods you with endorphins and drops your stress hormones almost instantly. So every single time that kid made the table laugh, their own body handed them a reward for it right when they needed one most. The pattern locks in fast because it actually works for a moment. Here's the twist. This is where the sad clown paradox stops being a clever phrase and turns into something much darker. That relief is real, but it's temporary. It changes how a moment feels. It does nothing to change what actually happened. The fight still happened. The fear still happened. That same kid goes to bed that night carrying exactly what they were carrying before the joke landed, except now there's one more layer stacked on top. Because nobody ever circled back afterward to ask if they were okay. Why would they? They were the funny one. The funny one doesn't need checking on, right? That's the trap ceiling shut quietly over years without a single person meaning for it to happen. There's a deeper layer underneath all of this too, something psychologists trace back to attachment style. Basically, the blueprint you built as a small child for whether the people around you could actually be trusted to show up for you emotionally. A kid who grows up unsure whether they're truly loved often learns to mock their own flaws before anyone else gets the chance. Because a wound you name yourself somehow hurts less than one someone else points out. A kid who learns nobody's coming to soothe them might instead sharpen their humor into something more cutting, more sarcastic, using jokes to hold people at a safe distance instead of letting them in. Different homes, different flavors of the exact same defense. But chaotic households generally produce this pattern more than any other kind. When every day feels even slightly unpredictable, humor becomes the one thing a kid can reliably control. And it doesn't stop at being funny. For a lot of people, this pattern curdles into something sharper as they get older, constantly making themselves the punchline, the "ha-ha, I'm a disaster" jokes, the self-deprecating one-liners that kill at parties. Here's the part that should genuinely stop you. Research on this exact pattern is startling. People with a strong habit of joking about their own flaws show measurably higher rates of depression, anxiety, and in some studies, even suicidal thoughts. Underneath it, the logic is brutally simple. If I make fun of myself first, you can't use it against me later. It looks like confidence from the outside. From the inside, it's often someone quietly rehearsing their own worst thoughts about themselves out loud, dressed up as a bit, applause included. And this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable because families don't just witness this pattern happening, they reward it. And then without realizing it, they trap the person inside it. The family clown stops being a personality and starts being a job, a role everyone unconsciously assigns and quietly expects performed. Which means the moment that person shows up, actually upset, actually needing something, the family often has no idea what to do with that version of them. Some get visibly uncomfortable, some flat out ask them to lighten up because the room, on some unspoken level, needs them to perform. Yasiki counselors working with kids from genuinely difficult homes, some raised around abuse, some with a parent in prison, describe seeing this exact same figure in every single group. The one who jokes the loudest. And every time they landed a laugh, their pain went quiet for a few seconds before it came right back. This isn't just a theory about strangers either. Look at the people we've actually watched live this out in public for years. One of the most beloved entertainers of modern times brought laughter into more living rooms than almost anyone alive. And the same restless, lightning-fast energy audiences loved on screen existed right alongside a private, years-long struggle with depression. People close to him have said the humor wasn't a mask layered over who he really was. It was genuinely him, but so was the darkness sitting underneath it all the way to the end. Or take a comedian who's spoken openly about a childhood so violent and unstable, she once said she didn't expect to make it past 21. And in the middle of that chaos, what did she do? She danced in her own kitchen. She performed because making people feel joy became the one thing she could actually control when nothing else in her life was controllable. These weren't people faking happiness for a camera. They were people who found a genuinely working tool for surviving real pain and got so good at it, the world only ever saw the laughter. So if you know someone like this, or maybe you're realizing right now that you are someone like this, here's what actually needs to change, not the humor. The humor was never the problem. The problem is that everyone around the funny one, including the funny one themselves, stopped checking underneath the joke. Somewhere in your life, the entertainer needs someone to sit with them after the room stops laughing and ask quietly, no audience watching, but how are you actually? Not as a bit, not for a laugh. Just once, sincerely. That's because the loudest laugh in the room is very often coming from the person who most needs someone to ask if they're okay. And the real tragedy was never that they were sad. It's that they got so good at hiding it, everyone around that table simply forgot to ask. If this changed how you'll look at the funniest person in your life, subscribe because we go deep into the psychology behind who we really are every week, not just the surface version. And I want to know in the comments, do you know someone who's always the funny one? Have you ever actually asked them how they're really doing?